was a pretty special day yesterday, I think, for a lot of us who were waiting with bated breath for that big nor'easter to come blowing through. Being outside of the city and having grown up outside of the city, I was wondering what it would be like, over here in the boondocks, up here in New Paltz. I know it's not the boondocks. In amazing New Paltz, hilly New Paltz, rural New Paltz. After over a decade living in New York City, where the pristine purity of winter's, I guess, winter's white, I guess, is often really quick and transient, where the beauty of that snow becomes slush so quickly that you barely have a moment to luxuriate in its luster. We woke up yesterday morning to snow up to our waist up here. And as I heard the boys bounding out of the house, their snow regalia on, all dressed up to play, very quickly, word got back to us that Orzi, our 4.5-year-old, was stuck in the snow. The boys related to us excitedly that they had tried to lift him out, but they came back to get the necessary tools to dig him out. They had to go down and get him. They had to go back out into the snow, and they had to go out and bring their brother back. This evening, this Shabbat, is a kind of grace, it feels like to me. Usually this Shabbat, the Shabbat known as Shabbat Miketz, the Parshat that we read, is the second of the 4 Parshiot, of the 4 parts of the Torah that deal with the story of Joseph. This Shabbat is usually the Shabbat in the middle of Hanukkah, but this year it falls at the end of Hanukkah. And not only does it fall at the end of Hanukkah, it falls, right, in a way that bridges Hanukkah with an actual Havdalah, with an actual separation that will take place tomorrow night, not tonight. As if giving us another day, another light, another, maybe even a 9th night of Hanukkah in which to process that which we've experienced over the last 10 months. And when I think about that moment, simple as it was yesterday morning, the moment where the brothers went back out to get their brother, of course I'm reminded of something very profound that takes place tomorrow morning in the Torah. It's a funny thing how life continues to teach us what we must know, even as we so quickly and so frequently forget the knowing and the lessons, right? One of the enduring truths that we know is that painful patterns don't just work themselves out. Dysfunctional and maladaptive ways of being in the world, whether they are personal, communal, or global in thought, speech, or behavior, they don't just undo themselves. What's unfinished calls to us. Maybe initially it calls to us in a whisper, but then it calls to us with desperation. Finish this, complete this, don't turn away from me. And in some profound way, we all know this to be true, that the past comes looking for us, doesn't it? The past comes looking for us and asks us to lift it up, to look at it, to live it, to breathe it, to learn it. And so tomorrow morning's reading, which is at the center of the Joseph narrative, the center of the, maybe even the most important narrative in all of the Torah, it hinges on, its fulcrum is essentially one moment and 2 words. One moment and 2 words. In the chapter 42, in chapter 42 of the book of Genesis, after Joseph has, of course, in the story, Joseph has risen, he has become a great and powerful leader, he has decided on a way to nourish the world after the 7 years of famine. There's a famine in the land, the Torah tells us. And Jacob turns to his remaining sons, the brothers, and says to them, I know that there is food in the land of Egypt. Vayomer in verse 2 of chapter 42. Redu shama v'shivru lanu misham. Go down there and bring back nourishment so that we might live and not die. Vayerdu achei Yosef. And the brothers of Joseph went down. 2 words. The first one, of course, is shever, the word used for nourishment in the Bible. Shever is, of course, the same word as the Hebrew word for brokenness. Shever and shvira are connected. Go down and find nourishment from the shvira, from the break. This word will repeat itself over and over again, calling our attention to it to say the break is the bread. That which was broken will also feed you. That which is broken will also feed you. That which is broken will also feed you. But only if you do something important. Second word. And it's a word that appears here. It appeared earlier in the Joseph narrative, vis-a-vis Joseph, vis-a-vis Judah. And it appears here in a slightly different quality. The word redu or raid. Raid in Hebrew means go down, descend, go down. Go down, Jacob tells the brothers, go down and see if there is nourishment in the broken place. If there is nourishment, if there's something that might feed this starving, hungry family. If you look at the word raid in other places, God says to Moses, raid, ki shichet amcha, go down, Moses, go be with the people. They have been broken, they have broken, go be with them. In the earlier parts of this narrative, Joseph doesn't go to Egypt of his own volition. He's, right, that he's taken down. And then Judah, of his own volition, leaves the brothers, and he's all alone. And these two, Joseph and Judah, are alone in their descent. But here, in this pivotal fulcrum moment, in maybe the most important moment in this story, Jacob says to the brothers, together, v'yerdu, go down together. Go down and bring back. This is so powerful. It's powerful because this descent also registers on us because Joseph himself doesn't want to go back up. And so there is a stalemate. Joseph is alone in the land of Egypt, the land of constriction, trying to forget his past, trying to forget who he was and where he came from. He refuses to even send a signal back to his father. We can readily imagine how traumatized he was. And over here on this side, Jacob and his children. Until ultimately Jacob says to them, go down, because you will not be able to go forward until you go down. You will not be able to go forward until you go down, until you are willing to go to the place that you have refused to see, until you make peace with that which you have hidden away. And in so many ways, Joseph too imagines that he can hide, he can turn away, right? But it comes back to him. And the brothers present themselves to Joseph. This movement going down to go forward. This rapprochement between Joseph and the brothers doesn't take place, though, remarkably, in the land of Canaan. It happens in the land of Egypt, in the land of constriction, in the land that will become the place where we are enslaved. In so many ways, tomorrow morning's reading speaks of the new normal. Tomorrow morning's reading tells us that the hope for happily ever after, the hope that the brothers will go down, they will be nourished by the brokenness, and then they will wind up coming back with Joseph is an illusion. It won't happen. The rapprochement will happen in the land. The coat of many colors has been torn asunder. It will not be sewn back together again. Joseph and the brothers will make peace, but it will not be the peace of what was, but the peace of what can only happen when we go down to go forward. The hope of going back to normal for all of us, we know it can't be. We know that it's impossible for us to imagine going backwards in time. We won't be going back to a world that has not been touched by trauma and by disillusionment. We know that even as we have seen some of the light that is at the end of the tunnel, as a dear friend of mine said to me this morning, it also has shown us the tunnel itself, and that tunnel, that place, is not a place that we are to go back to, but we are to go down into, to extract what we need to extract, to fix what we need to fix, to see what we need to see, to go forward. Redu Shama, go back to bring up. And it won't happen immediately. It won't happen in one fell swoop. It won't happen as we know right now that it can't happen any quicker than it's going. And that there'll be starts and stops and fits and bursts. But more important than all of that is, what will it be that we will return to, as it were? What will it be in this world? How will we find the new normal? It certainly can't be by looking away. It certainly can't be by turning the eye. It certainly will not happen, right? If we're not strong enough, if we don't find the support necessary to do a deep dive below the surface of things, to live with more transparency, to live with more vulnerability, to live with greater accuracy, to make those choices that are not easy ones, but that are the necessary ones for us to kind of come out of this differently. Some of you in this community know that 2 weeks ago, I recorded a podcast that I let the community know about the next week, a podcast that had me going into some of my family secrets, into some of the things that I hold deep in my own heart and deep in a place where in many ways I needed the strength, I needed the courage, I needed the clarity to be able to share that and to look at it deeply, and to look at it deeply with some of you in this community. And as I now take a turn to a little bit of a time off for the next couple of weeks, I'm thinking and bringing with me Jacob and Joseph and the brothers and saying, how might I also go down to go forward? How might I raid? How might I raid? What's the raid? How do I go there? How do I descend for the sake of healing? And so I'm wondering tonight, as you make the turn this evening out of Ramamu into your various places of eating and Shabbating and connecting, what might it be like just for 30 seconds, a minute, maybe two, just to explore together some of the places that you have been, as it were, forced? Because, of course, the conditions that were present for Jacob, had there not been a famine, maybe Jacob would never have sent the boys down. Had we never had COVID, we might not have been up here for this snow. So often in our lives, we are absolutely responding to conditions that are beyond us and that force us sometimes to do the work that we would otherwise avoid doing. And there is a fundamental dance called the avoid dance, where we can just skirt around that void that Jacob, as it were, was forced to confront and send his sons into. So I wonder, for all of you tonight, in what ways has this last 10 months forced you, invited you to look at things that you might not have looked at otherwise? And in what ways will you do it differently? In what ways is there an invitation here to descend for the sake of going forward? I'm so curious to hear, or maybe to imagine, what might be explored tonight and what might arise for you. And I bless you that as you step into the deep snow, it's hard to to get a little light, a little ore out of that snow. When my boys did, they came back a couple of minutes later. They had lifted up ore. They lifted up my little light. He was a little bit wet, of course, and wondering why it took so long to go back and get him. But with courage and the right tools, there's a lot of light that we might extract during this winter. I bless each and every one of us to have the power to do redo, to raid, veshuvu, shivru, bring back the nourishment from those broken places.